to the single moms who take their son to the barbershop, let me put you on a little bit of game here. Stay out of the barbershop. Okay? That is for your son and for your son only. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm just trying to put you on game in case maybe the father's not around and you know, trying to help you out here. Let me explain something to you about a child going to the barbershop, especially at about the age of 8. The barbershop is a rite of passage for a child to conduct himself like a man. He's going to have a relationship or a friendship with a man that is his barber outside of family members, that he's going to tell things that he may not ever want you to be around to know. So for example, that he likes a girl, that he's, you know, getting ready to ask somebody to the dance or whatever. And that barbershop's going to say, okay, I got you. Say less. We're going to take care of that. That barber is going to take care of that kid for years to come, based off of the things that that child tells. That child won't tell the barber anything if you are there taking pictures and thinking that the moment's all cute. As men, we know this. So at a certain age, at about 8, we pull up to the barbershop, we give the child the cash, and we say, go handle your business. We sit out in the car, we let them sit there and wait, we let them sit there and conduct themselves in the barbershop. Let the child figure out the haircut that they want. Let them understand the kind of style that they want. They're going to learn by trial and error and all that shit. And at the end of the day, the child pays with the cash, daps up the barber, and goes on about his business. If you are there, the mother, if you are there the entire process, even though you're meaning well, the child's not going to have a conversation with the barber, and the barber's going to feel a little uneasy about having a conversation with the child. So then they don't really get into the deep-rooted things that a child would want to get into having this relationship with the barber. So I know that you mean well, and maybe you just haven't been told this, but the best thing for you to do is to pull up, give the child cash. I don't care if they got Venmo, Apple Pay, whatever. Give the child cash. That helps them feel like they're a man. They can conduct themselves like a man. Let the barber know what he wants, and then let the child pay for the cash with the tip involved, dap them up, and let them come out and feel good about that. They have handled that transaction themselves.
My experiences with my son in the barbershop have been epic. The first time I took my son to the barbershop, of course he screamed like crazy. He's autistic, so he doesn't like people touching his head. But the first time I took my son to the barbershop, the dude that owned the barbershop talked about my breasts the entire time. And every time I would come into that barbershop to get my son's haircut, he would talk about my breasts. So I removed myself and sent in my mother. Somehow him and my mother got into it. Not my mother and my son's barber, but my mother and the guy that owned the barbershop. And he and my mom were like the same age. Me and my son's barber were like the same age. But I could not keep coming to that barbershop to see him because I kept having a terrible experience. I love the way he cut my son's hair. I ended up getting another barber where it was a better thing for my son because he had his own space. It wasn't like a big barbershop full of men. He had his own little booth. He was always dressed up, suit and tie. He was a good barber. I loved him. Then I let my son grow his dreads out, right? I took him to this barbershop in Sacramento. And the guy that was his barber, he cut my son's hair. My son was screaming his head off. And he was like trying to force my son to get his hair cut. And I asked the barber, I said, do you want me to cut off his dreads before you try to cut his hair? Because he started trying to cut his hair while my son still had dreads. I said, do you want me to take the scissors and cut the dreads off first before you use the clippers? And he was like, nah, he's just acting like this because he don't want his hair cut. I was like, nah, I think something's wrong. So he could only get the sides of my son's hair cut off. So my son had like this dread mullet. It was ridiculous. He looked ridiculous. But later on that day, I looked at my son's head and he had cuts all over his head. And he was trying to explain to me that the reason why my son had cuts all over his head was because my son kept moving. And I was like, nah, it must have just been his clippers, you know what I mean? But I do want to say that as a woman, I never want to walk into another barbershop where it's a whole bunch of men, it's a space for men, and I wish my son's father was around to take my son to the barbershop. I noticed that my son had a better experience at the barbershop when my daughter's boyfriend would take him to the barbershop. I'm going to take him to the barbershop tomorrow, and I'm going to show y'all how he acted at the barbershop, and I'm going to show y'all what it's like in that barbershop. It may be different because it's not a predominantly black barbershop. A lot of barbershops here where I live in the Bay, it's a lot of shops that are owned by women, and all of the barbers are women. I think I'm just going to take him to that type of barbershop and hope things go well with me being in there. Because right now, I don't have a man to take my son to the barbershop. I don't have footage. It did not go well.